Good evening to all the Rotarians here. And since I don't know you by my name, I'll just go to address you as Rotarians, which you are. And I must thank Shankar for giving me this opportunity after about 6 years of non-teaching, sitting at home. Generally, I retired in 2014, and since then I've been sitting at home. And I am also a first-time user for the Zoom meetings. All right, and Shankar just briefed me yesterday on how to use it. So in case something goes wrong, it's his fault.
So,
can you do an F5?
No, I think I'll do this because it's easier this way.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. And since I was a lecturer for 20 odd years, I might go into a lecture mode occasionally, but please bear with me because my usual audience is 20-year-olds, and I have to pump them with more theoretical knowledge because I can't afford to give them booze in the college, which is anti-institutional. So I have been and like I said, there's a quiz at the end of it. There are only about 10 questions which I have pulled up. So at the end of it, whoever can come up with the first 10 correct answers, maybe when next time we meet, I will host you a drink, or Shankar might pour you a drink. So we dived right into the mystical world of whiskey. Some brands which I have put there. So as in every drinking facility, I have started off with a caution. Having an occasional drink is fine, but if you're making it a thrice daily habit, then probably you're in the wrong group. You should be in Alcoholic Anonymous and not in the Rotary group. Right, moving on. Ushkeba. Ushkeba is a Gaelic word, which was the original for the word whiskey. And probably it has got some connection to Shankar. That is why he picked up Ushkeba, because it is very similar to his Ushankar photography. So I said maybe there is a connection there. And Ushkeba means water of life. And like all whiskeys, it starts off with a beer. So basically, you take beer, and if you distill it, you'll get whiskey. If you take wine and you distill it, you get brandy. If you take molasses or fermented sugarcane juice and you distill it, you get rum. Similarly, if you have, say, blue agave and you ferment it, you'll get a product called pulque. If you distill pulque, you'll get tequila. So in the case of whiskey, it starts off as a beer and then you distill it. The only difference between the beer, which is used for making whiskey, that it does not have the hops, which imparts a flavor to beer. In whiskey, the beer does not have hops, so it starts off its life as from barley. You malt the barley, which is basically germination. Like we make the kosambi salad, so you germinate the lentils overnight to make the salad the next day, because it converts the starches into sugars. So in this case, the barley is malted, which is basically steeped in water, so it germinates. Then you toast it, so the level of toasting will give you the color of the beer. So if the toasting is done to ensure that the barley stops germinating. Then you mix it with water. That is the term. Whiskey is made from wort. Wort is basically the water which is got the sugars in it. And then yeast is added, and then it is fermented. After the fermentation, it is double distilled in the case of Scotch. So why do you do double distillation? Because the first fermentation gives you about maybe 20% of alcohol, and then so that's called low wines. And when you distill it for the second time, then you get up to a higher 60 or 70% of alcohol. You need to have minimum 40% of alcohol for a legal definition of whiskey.
Just a moment, okay. Bobby.
Yeah.
Just a moment. I'm just switching.
Yeah. Yeah. All right.
Can I move?
Yeah. Move to the next one. So this is the grains which are basically used for making whiskey. So on the top left, you can see barley. Um, then you have rye and you have corn. American whiskeys are mostly made with corn. Scotch whiskeys with barley. American whiskeys also have rye in it. Or it's a combination of everything, of grain and barley and malt. You will find the word malt being used more than barley because the germinated ones is basically what is used. All right, moving on. Right. Now, in the difference between a Scotch whiskey and other whiskeys is this particular product. As you can see, a couple of guys are actually digging the soil. Now, this is basically what is peat. Peat is actually decaying vegetable matter, which is used for harvest. They harvest it from the fields, and this is what is used to what do you say to dry the malt. So when we say stopping the fermentation process, they use this to stop the fermentation process. Now, when this smoke rises through the barley, it captures the smokiness of the uh, peat, which is why you will find the term peaty or smoky flavoring, especially in Scotch whiskies, in Scotches or Scottish whiskies. Rest of the whiskies around the world, they don't do this peating process, so you will find they are mostly unpeated whiskies. Right now, after the whiskies are made and it is distilled, it comes out as a clear liquid, and this clear liquid is actually stored in casks for the aging process. This is where when magic happens and the harsh whiskey um, starts to develop a smoother taste. It becomes more mellow, and it sorts of settles down. And the minimum legal requirement is only about 3 years, but most whiskey manufacturing companies or distilleries, they keep it for a longer period of time so that it develops in character. And different casks gives different kinds of flavor profile to the whiskeys. Like in the if it's a dry cellar with a concrete floor, you'll have more water will evaporate, so the whiskey will become drier. If it is a damp warehouse, you will find that there is more water content in the whiskey, so you will find it is more smoother. So it all depends on which distiller is making it, how he's making it, and every single step of the process can affect the final product, be it the shape of the still, that is the distilling unit which is there in the factory, the kind of still that is used, the length of the neck of the still, every single aspect, the water which is used. Water is actually a very important component of the manufacture of whiskey. And a lot of distillers, they take pride in keeping their water source close to themselves, in the sense like it's not shared with other people. And most of the distilleries have their streams and the rivers or the small brooks running through the uh, through the land, and that is the water which is used for making the whiskey, which gives it its unique characters. Uh, yeah, so I was talking about angels. So when you keep it in this casks, these casks are not, what do you say, evaporate proof. No, it's not like stainless steel containers where the beer is kept. All right, so there is a certain amount of evaporation which happens, and that's called angel share in Scotland and Ireland. And in America, they are called angel spinch instead of angel share. Now since now we know the casks, the whiskeys are stored at about maybe 60 percentage of alcohol, and after 20 years, if you're losing say about 1% every year, so the percentage comes down to about 40% at the bottling side. So it is if you get it at the cask strength without dilution, it is called a cask strength or cask bottle or bottled at cask strength. Some distilleries may add water to it, to dilute it to the required strength. Some people bottle it directly itself. There are some whiskies which are at a higher alcoholic percentage, some are at lower percentage. So this loss of almost 20% is what is called angel share. And that is one of the reasons why whiskies become more expensive, because they have less to sell after 20 years. And the most difficult part of this process is to ensuring the quality of this. You need to, when you cask the whiskey, you need to know the quality which is going to happen after 20 years. And it is much more difficult to maintain the quality in single malts as compared to blended whiskies. Blended, you can always mix different kinds of whiskies to get the final product. But in a case of a single malt, to get the same quality year after year and with the same amount of color without any additional coloring or flavoring is an extremely delicate task. And the master blender or the master distiller is a very highly paid job there. Next. Right, so I was talking about the casks. That the term is called cooperage, and the minimum aging period is 3 years. The American bourbon casks, bourbon whiskies, they use virgin oak, whereas Scotch uses these American bourbon casks they imported, and they are used to store Scotch. Apart from bourbon, they also use sherry, port, different Madeira casks, different kinds of wine casks from France. Every single possible used cask is used to impart the final product or final flavor profile as decided by the distiller. Obviously, that is why we have so many different kinds of whiskeys, and each of them have their own characteristics and flavor profiles and notes, and that is why it's almost a science. A small trivia question: Tabasco, the sauce, is stored in Jack Daniel casks. Uh, Casks are used and reused up to 60 years. So every time after a aging period it comes out, they actually scrape the inside and rechar it. Now the charring of the inside of the cask can happen either lightly, also it's called toasting, or it may be a heavy charring. So that releases the sugars of the wood of the oak, and this charcoal actually works on the blends, and it actually forms a magical combination in order to blend the final product, to get the final product.
Bobby, the color also comes from the
yes, the color,
yeah.
the mellowing of the thing, the charcoal imparts the color over a period of time. So none of the whiskeys, excepting Canadian whiskeys, they're legally allowed to add color to it, but none of the other whiskeys, that the colors that you see in different ones, as you can see, the Powers whiskey, the color is brilliant.
Yeah, more to the camera.
Yeah, so it's different as compared to maybe a Jim Beam. All right, so the colors are so different as compared to what you can see. All right, so this is all naturally produced in the casks over periods of time.
Shall I move on, Bobby?
Yeah, next. So these are some of the terms which you may come across when you buy bottles. If you're in duty-free shops, and you can see it's a malt whiskey, like I told you. It comes from barley. Grain whiskey, if it is not barley, it may be other grains which are used, or unmalted barley, which is not. So they take the barley and mix it with other grains and then powder it and then do the fermentation process. Single malt, a commonly found term in most people, and most of people like drinking single malts. They are made from a single distillery. So it is the American term for the same process is called a straight. It's called if you see on the bottle, if you see a word straight bourbon, it means it is from a single distillery. Vatted malt is a blend of single malts, whereas a regular blended Scotch, like a Johnny Walker, it is a blend of malts as well as grains. So it's a So it may have 40% malt, 60% grain, or it may have more or less. So all these combinations are left to the distillers to decide as to what will make the what will make the best thing for the market.
Bobby,
Next,
I
yeah.
heard that Black Label might have something like 30 different
Yeah,
whiskey.
32, 42. So, I mean, depending on which one, I would come. I was thought I'll speak about when I come to the Johnny Walker. So,
Okay,
so there is a
okay,
slide
okay.
on.
Yeah.
So, just to give you some examples, Big Pete is an example of uh, a whited malt. So, it is a blend of malts from different distilleries. Uh, the the difference. Okay, so you have one more next. There's another picture of just regular malt whiskies which we are familiar with, say Glenmorangie, a Glengrant, the Balvenie. Uh, if you, there are so many. I don't know that we have any single malt bars in India, but abroad there are so many. It's very expensive. The reason why you don't see too many vatted malts here in India is because it's expensive, and there's probably not a big enough market for it. Because in India, apparently there is a story going that there are more Scotch sold in India than manufactured in Scotland. So I don't know how much of that. So there may be a quality issue there, or there may be a licensing issue there, or taxing issue there. Next. So yeah, next three, get the picture. Yeah. So that's an example of a single grain whiskey where there is no barley in it. It's made from a single grain, so it could be either rye or it could be either any other grain. Lafroig is a single malt whiskey, which we know that it comes from the distillery of Lafroig. If you're interested, maybe you could go and go to a website or go to a site where they give you the actual pronunciations of these Scottish and Irish whiskies, because they all have different kinds of pronunciation that we know. And because it is not in English, it is in Gaelic, so the pronunciation completely changes. So maybe if you're going to be visiting a classy single malt club or a bar, and maybe that will give you an advantage. In the case of blended Scotch, I've shown you 5 blends of Johnny Walker. They were not originally called Black Label and Red Label. They were called the old Highland malt, and different names it had. When actually the story of Johnny Walker is quite interesting. The man who created them, he was actually a grocer. He used to sell tea, and people used to come to his shop, and then he used to blend different teas from different parts, and then blend it and give it to them for India for consumption. Now he started doing that with whiskey. So his shop, in those days, he didn't have any special shops to keep the alcohol. So he used to keep different alcohols from different distilleries, but he used to find that the quality is not good enough. So what he used to do is to blend from different places and make his own blend and start selling it. So it became very popular. Then it went on to his son and then to his grandchildren. There were 2 guys, Alexander Walker the second and George Walker. So one was a master blender and the other guy was a master salesman. So he used to go around the countryside and sell these bottles. And they were the first people who came up with the square bottle, because they figured out if they had a square bottle, they can pack more in a carton. So they can actually sell or transport more alcohol rather than having round bottles, because they would have spaces in between. So that was one reason. And the reason for the cross label was the old name was the old Highland single malt, which did not fit into a horizontal label. So they had to angle the label for it to be fitted. To fit it on the bottle. And when he went to this, when George went to these shops and sat down, he always found people asking for, give me the drink from the black, or with the black label, or give me the drink with the green label. So they came back and then renamed everything based on the color. So you have the red label, which is 10 years old. You have the black label, which is 18 years old, and so on and so forth. The blue label is sometimes, I think, is about 40, 45 years old. So that's why it becomes very expensive. And there's a story about the striding man. That's the logo of the John Walker. Uh, it was done by a artist on a napkin, on a paper napkin. An initial one was actually him walking left, but they realized, or they found that as a marketing tool, walking left means going backwards. So, and then they flipped it around and then modernized it, and you can see now the walking man is actually walking from left to right rather from right to left. Yeah, and as far as the blends are concerned, each of them contain different. So red label, I think, has about 30 blends. A black label has got about 40. Blue label, on the other hand, has got has less number of blends, but they are better quality blends. There is I don't know whether it is still come to India or not. It's called the John Walker brand, which is only about 6 distilleries, but very exclusive blends is used for making the John Walker. Next, please. One of the most expensive alcohols, this thing is this one. That's a Dalmore Trinitas. Now there are more expensive ones, but they are sold in auction and stuff. I'm just talking just on the size of a 1 liter bottle. So the price sold is about $160,000. There's only 3 bottles were made, and you can see the ages, since 1939, 1926, and only 1 bottle is up for sale. There are bottles which are more expensive in the terms of it is made out of platinum or crystal, or it's got diamonds on it. I'm just talking about as an alcohol. This is one of the most expensive ones. So in case anybody is buying it, please call me for a drink. The basic difference between an Irish whiskey, a Scotch, and a bourbon is this: Irish barley and water. There's no smoky flavor and distilled 3 times. Scotch is usually barley and water, smoky flavor, but distilled twice. Whereas bourbon is made of corn, because that was the most prevalent grain there. Robust flavor and distilled once. In bourbon, there is also Tennessee whiskey and Kentucky whiskey, which are available. They are slightly different. The Tennessee whiskeys they are filtered through maple charcoal, so it gives a much more mellow taste as compared to a regular bourbon. A bourbon, now go to the next slide, please. Right, so these are the basic American whiskeys. So you have the bourbon, you have a Tennessee whiskey, and you have a rye whiskey. A bourbon and Tennessee whiskey, by law, needs to have at least 51% of corn, whereas a rye whiskey should have at least 51% of rye grains. That's the only requirement. And Jack Daniels is one of the most popular ones from Tennessee. The other most popular one is also called George Dickel, and there's a third one. I forget the name of a third whiskey from Tennessee, but most of them are bourbons or ryes.
Bobby, I heard that the place where they
make
Jack Daniels,
you can't drink it.
You can't sell it.
You can't sell it. Yeah, you can't sell it there. There's no alcohol sold, or Tennessee whiskeys are sold in the land of Tennessee. There's not a single bar, there's not a single shop where you can get it. It's all sold outside of the state. We also sometimes get not for sold in sale in Goa, not for sale in Karnataka. There sometimes we get alcohols or bottles you'll find. So this is all to make more money.
Right. Because there is also the state of prohibition in Tennessee that you can't buy any alcohol in Tennessee. That's what I was told.
Okay. All right. I knew about the Tennessee whiskey, but I don't know about the other alcohols. So there is available.
So like the place where Jack Daniels is, there is prohibition, and you can't buy alcohol in that city.
All right. Maybe. Now the Japanese also have a very are a later entrant. JD is a Tennessee whiskey, not a bourbon whiskey. It's different. Bourbon is different from Tennessee whiskey. The Japanese, this guy Masataka Taketsuru, he went over to Scotland to learn the art of making whiskey. and he came back with the formula and a Scottish wife. And he came back to Japan, and he wanted to set up place in actually in northern Japan, in a place called Yochi. But his wife said, no, you must do it in closer to town so that it's easier to sell and everything. But later he made it into. So there are only two major distilleries in Japan. That is the Nikka and the Suntory, and they own most of the distilleries there. But the difference in Japan as compared to Scotch is Scotch you can get spirits from other distilleries and blend it. In Japanese whiskeys, they can't take it from other distilleries. They have to, whatever the blends that they do, they need to make it from themselves. So each distillery will have many sub distilleries which will make different kinds of whiskeys, and then they mix it together for that. They are very expensive because the quality is so good. JD is not bourbon, yeah, it's Tennessee. So you will find that they are very expensive because they whatever they make is now being lapped up by the connoisseurs, and everybody is swearing by Japanese whiskey. So next time anybody going to Japan, maybe you could pick up a couple of bottles for your own consumption.
These are the popular brands.
Yeah, these are some of the popular. Suntory and Nikka are the two distilleries, so they make all the brands, and they are different kinds. These are some of the ones which I thought was interesting. I do not know much about them because I haven't had a chance to get my hands on a Japanese whiskey for me to do its justice to it.
I think Hibiki and Yamazaki, I think these are quite kind of, at least in India, they seem to be popular. A lot of people.
Yeah, okay, yeah. Must be so. Coming to the Indian brands, these are now most of the whiskies that we have been having all these years are actually made from sugarcane. So technically they are not whiskies, they are all rums. In fact, if you are exporting any Indian whiskies, they are labeled as rums and not as whiskies, because the origin is made from sugarcane. You distill it, and what they do is they add flavorings and coloring to make it into whiskies. So everything that you get in a CSD canteen, or most of it that you used to get earlier, are all rums. Doesn't matter whether you're drinking whiskey, rum, vodka, everything was basically rums. And then the flavorings were changed based on that. But recently, these people, that's the Amrit distilleries and Radico Khaitan Rampur and Paul John in Goa, they have come up with some really nice single malts, and they are now making waves across the world. And I was fortunate enough to attend the launch of Amrit here in ITC. I was called, one of the students was working there, so he gave me an invite, and I was present when the Mr. Jim Murray, who's the leading expert on whiskeys around the world, and he makes his own list every year. And he listed Amrit as one of the top 3 whiskeys of the world. And we did a blind tasting there of single malts from Scotland, Ireland, and India, and we could not figure it out which one was which. And Amrit, as a layman, I could understand how good it was as compared to any single malts around the world, which is why he rated it pretty high. He also taught us how to drink whiskey, which I will demonstrate slightly later in a couple of more screens. Right, next.
You want to grab some water, Bob?
No, it's okay. How much? This is one. There are some spelling. So Scottish and Canadian whiskies and also Japanese whiskies are spelled without the E. Rest of the other world, Americans also always like to do things a little differently, so they put an extra E because they think they have an extra pair of horns, so they have always complicate matters. You can see that complication even in their bottles. You will find that a 40% alcohol would be listed as 80 degrees proof in an American bottle. So they double everything. So you'll find different kinds of proofing system. But now most of them are coming to the standard. They have to mention the percentage of alcohol. So you'll find the word V by V, which is volume by volume, 43% alcohol by volume per volume. So it is the V by V, you'll find it on the bottle. Right. Next. Okay. Coming back to the drinking part, these are the typical 3 drinking glasses. The professional would use the first type of glass, that's a Glencairn glass. If you don't have one,
what do you mean by a professional?
The connoisseurs, the connoisseurs. Okay. Because I mean you see the stem is very short, so it allows the hand to come in contact with the whiskey, so it actually releases its aromas and flavors and everything. We are used to the one on the extreme right for drinking our whiskeys. So that's probably the kind of glass we are normally used at. So whiskey with water. And one of the reasons is the humidity in India. All right, one of the reasons we add ice to our drinks is basically because it's a hot place, so you need to have a dram is another term for a shot. So when you say shot, a dram is a measurement used for making whiskeys, measuring whiskeys. So in the absence of a fancy Glencairn glass, you can use a regular wine glass. I'm using a regular red wine glass to do today's demonstration. And yeah, so there is these are 3 kinds of glasses which is used. So if you are a single malt connoisseur, so probably you might want to enjoy it in this particular manner. Coming to the question of if you're going to a single malt club, or if you're drinking with serious malt drinkers, putting ice or putting soda or a Coke will be frowned upon, and maybe you might, it might be even some disrespecting the alcohol, so to speak. Moving on.
We are going to go for practicals after this, is it?
Yeah, what's the next thing? So this is the things that you need to observe while you are drinking. Yeah, we could do the tasting right now. So there is a difference between drinking whiskey and appreciating whiskey. So this is more about appreciation. So how are we sorted for this? Can we?
No, you can just Bobby, you can just demo. I think the other guys they're all working from home, so I'm sure they will have a glass in their hand. So
okay, all right, okay. So if you were to be drinking, you put a little bit into the glass, and what Jim Murray did was he used to keep his hand over it so that it warms up a bit. Now in Indian scenario, you will find that now, and if you swirl it, you will find that it is sliding from the sides of the glass. Those are called legs of the glass. So first thing you do is observe the color, whether it's got a brilliant color or it has got a very cloudy appearance. The cloudy appearance happens if it's not filtered properly before casting it, or it may be. You must remember that spirit never ages inside the bottle; it only ages in the cask. So even if you go for 100 years inside the bottle, it's going to taste the same. So you observe the color, you see the legs. So the longer it takes to come down from the sides, the higher the density, the more the viscosity. Now in India, if you take a smell at it, you will find that it is mostly, you will get the alcohol first. That is one of the reasons why adding ice is more preferred here as compared to the West, because they come in from the cold. So a whiskey at a room temperature would be pretty okay, whereas we come in from the heat and then come back and to have a warmer whiskey. So That's why most people prefer adding whiskey here. Now, if you take a smell of it, you may get some initial notes. Most will be alcohol. So for it to open up, you may add a little bit of water. I usually add about, say, maybe uh, about half a shot of glass, maybe 15 ml of glass water. Take another smell. You'll find that the smells have softened down. The flavors have improved, and then you take a good smell of it, then you'll find that you get the initial notes and the later notes and whatever they say on the bottles, you might start to identify. Obviously, you require a lot of drinking and a good memory for you to understand, remember what flavors each whiskey gives. Till that time, you have to depend on what is written on the bottle, I guess. Jim Murray's had an 18-step process. Yes, it is pretty similar to wine drinking, yes. But in wine, you don't add the water. Here, you add the water. And he says the first sip is for getting the mouth used to the flavors of it. Then you take a second sip, and then you have a third sip and a fourth sip. He incidentally never swallows it out. He always spits it out, so that, and he takes extreme good care of his palate, of his papillae. It is rumored that he doesn't even kiss anybody because he's afraid that the germs from the other person might affect his palate, so he doesn't even do that. So I don't know. I read it somewhere, so I found it strange. So you take and you allow it to travel the various part, as you know. Yes, I did add water. I add a little bit of water for it to release for allow it to open up. Maybe it wasn't shown. I added a little bit of water from my shot glass. So if you're drinking good whiskeys, so this is probably the way to enjoy it. So that, and then uh, after a couple of, you can, when you get more and more experience on it, maybe you could have discussions with your friend, or you can have a drinking evening where you take different kinds of whiskeys from different parts, or you can take it from different regions of the same place. Can define cheers. Okay. So you see the finish, and then the length, the bouquet is free, add some water, then you do the finish. Now, there was a question about, can I define cheers? If you look at any alcohol, you can see it, all right? You can smell it, nose it, taste it. So, but the ear, the fourth sense is not used. So that's one of the reasons when you clink glasses, you get the sound of it. So that's your fourth sense. That is one story. Another story said that in the olden times, when kings used to drink, they used to drink from metal glasses, metal tumblers, rather than wine glasses. And there's always a risk of you being poisoned. So if you're drinking with somebody and you're afraid whether the guy in front of you is poisoning you, you basically give it a good shot so that some alcohol from your glass goes into the other fellow's glass. And so in case it's poison, he also dies. So that is another story which comes. But cheers is basically for good health and for good cheer. Americans have a strange. They say, "Here is mud in your eye." Is the standard greeting while drinking. So there are different ones from different parts of the country. The Zulu cheers is called Ugiwawa. So maybe you can use it sometime or someplace. You can say Ugiwawa. Of course, in Gaelic, next slide. Ice, ideally don't put ice in it, because the ice dilutes, and then it substitutes the aromas which is available in the whiskey. What you can actually use, now you may say that Scotch on the rocks. Why it's quite obvious that you add ice into it. But the rocks that they are indicating is they sometimes take out the cold pebbles from the streams of the particular distillery and then put it in the drink to cool it. That way the drink doesn't get diluted. So that way the drink does not get diluted. Nowadays you get those whiskey stones, so stainless steel ones, which you can use it. So that maybe can be used for maybe chilling the drink uh, without actually spoiling the aromas. But then again, don't overdo it, because if you chill it too long, then there's no point drinking expensive whiskey and then messing it up with ice. The water that they typically used was the mineral water used to making of the particular whiskey. So it could be from the spring water. In fact, one of the classic combinations is bourbon and branch. So that is bourbon with the spring water of that particular stream, of that particular distillery where it was made. So that's impossible to get. So we'll have to probably do with water, which does not have any other additions. Now, you might argue that Jack and Coke is a great combination. Actually, it's the bartender's drink, Jack and Coke, Jack Daniels and Coke. And probably the reason why it is the bartender's drink was probably they must be stealing a drink or taking a drink swig from behind the bar, so they don't want anybody else to see. So mixing Coke was the best way to cover up the act. So that became popular over time. So Jack and Coke is one combination which can be used.
So, Bobby, we have around 5 more minutes before we can have a.
Yeah, I'm done.
Yeah.
What's the next one?
Yeah, this is the quiz.
Oh, this is the quiz. And the Gaelic word for cheers is called. The Gaelic, I'll just explain why we don't have too many cocktails. There are a few. The reason is this has got so many flavor profiles in itself that there are very less items which can actually mix with the whiskey, because it is like making cocktails with wines. They have so much of depth of flavors that if you add anything else, it will screw up the entire taste of this thing. You take 20 years to make this drink, and then you screw it up with a cocktail. It's pointless. So that's why they probably drink it straight. There is, of course, the Manhattan and the whiskey sour, which are the most popular ones. But of course, they are not made with extremely expensive whiskeys. They make regular from the regular well. So maybe a blended whiskey is used for making those cocktails.
So I was watching a video somewhere, and they said that आप अगर whiskey enjoy करने हो तो you can put even fruit juice and you can do whatever you want. But if you want to appreciate whiskey, this is what is the way to go about it.
The Indian, we are bred on director specials and all those signature whiskeys, which are the cheaper versions of whiskey. So that one, you don't, they're so harsh that you have to add something for it to be palatable. But the expensive ones, the better made ones, don't require it.
Okay, can I just also add, Bobby, if you permit me?
Yeah.
The fact that they say that you need to put the whiskey in your mouth, just a little whiskey in your mouth, and the saliva dilute it, and let it remain in the mouth for some time before you swallow it. And like most of us are used to just putting whiskey, putting a lot of ice and then soda, and then gulping it in one go. So probably you could elaborate. Is it the way to have whiskey, or is there a more gentlemanly way?
If they have taken so much of time to put the flavors into the whiskey, so if you have to give it respect, you need to. If the idea is to get the alcohol in the stomach as quickly as possible and to get drunk, then obviously this is not the place to do it, or the whiskey to do it. Now, if you really have to enjoy it, we probably have. Now, at a particular whiskey promotion event in the Punjab, when this was told to the people out there, half the crowd got up and walked off, because they thought, this is not who the heck is going to drink whiskey like this, because they want to drink it in large Patiala pegs with water, soda, ice, and everything. So, what is the best food types to have with whiskey? And this is another mistake. What most of us do is, we drink first and then we have our food. But if you really want to enjoy, probably, you could do it after having a meal. Now, most of us, when we have drinks, we have snacks, oily snacks, which goes along with it. And by the end of it, the oil and the alcohol do not mix well in your stomach. And then you get too drunk too fast. So you miss out on your dinner and then you have a bad hangover. So if you have some food in your stomach, doesn't matter what it is, you can probably, consume more alcohol, one. I mean, and secondly, you can, enjoy the drink. So post dinner drinks, these well aged ones are all liquor rules. No. So you just have it post the dinner, not before dinner or during dinner.
So Bobby, can you
Yeah.
talk about having peanut masala with single malt? What do you think about it?
Please avoid. Because you're having something spicy and with onions and everything. Where the heck are you going to taste the whiskey in your mouth?
So there's also a recommendation after this program that there is maybe an opportunity to start a whiskey club soon.
Yeah. Yes, I have noted that Vijay. I think this recommendation came from Vijay Mane. Vijay, I have noted that I will be the district fellowship chair for the next year. We will definitely do it.
No, in fact, we are all part of RWFI, the wine team.
Yeah, I know.
So us last about 6-8 months back to start this whiskey club. I think it's time to start now.
No, we will do that.
Take it up. We'll all be part of your club.
Sure. Yeah.
And
Bobby, please go ahead. Yeah.
So Bobby, should we just close with a quiz now? I mean,
and close with the kiss, but I was just telling the Gaelic word for cheers is slonche. Slonche. It is there in the last slide. The spelling, it is spelled, that is slonche. Now you may think that is written different, slant, but it is pronounced slonche.
Slonche. All right. We got that.
Yep.
Bobby, we have found an alternative Indian word for saying cheers. Okay, let me say that. No, this is something new which we have, in Rotary we have innovated.
Okay.
This is called as Shambho.
Oh, Shambho, Shiva Shambho. But we should say Shambho for.
Okay, that's probably there was a time we did that. We did that, but now I think it's.
So I have given some links.
Okay, so should we go to the quiz quickly?
No sweets with drink. Yeah, so you can put up the quiz for.
So we'll ask questions one by one, and they can come on the.
Yeah.
So the first question is, what is the origin of the word alcohol? Anybody knows? You can type it in the chat. Otherwise, our expert, Bobby George, is here. We'll ask him. So we're going to give 30 seconds to question.
Ushkeba.
Yes, Mr. Sundar Prakash is correct from the Arabic.
Hey, Rajesh.
Rajesh Gassi. This is Rajesh Gassi.
Sundar typed it on the chat box at the same time.
Okay.
At the same time.
It takes longer time. It takes longer time.
Okay.
It takes longer
time. Because the kajal, which was made in the Saudi Arab in Arab countries, was called kohl. So when the Irish monks traveled around the world and then they reached there and they took the distillation technique from there and went back to Ireland and started their distillation process. So they call it alcohol. So the coal. So that's how it's come up.
All right. And the next question is, what is the origin of the word whiskey?
Ushkeba.
Ushkeba was already told. So good. Our students are doing very well.
Yes.
Okay,
what is malt?
Third question, what is malt? No answer. Barley. Rajesh Kundar says barley.
Yeah, it is the fermentation process of barley.
It is not fermentation process. It is what about the barley? What happens to the barley?
It needs to, you need to start the fermentation, right? So you are add malt to it, and
So what is
which is
malt?
called also malting process. Water.
So it is germinated barley. Like we make kosambari salad, so same thing. So germinated barley, yes.
Okay, where is the smokiness of Scotch is coming from? This is an easy one.
Yeah.
We have a lot of experts there. Okay,
Yeah.
Rajesh Kundar is
It's a burnt.
first Pete.
It's a
Smoking, yeah.
Okay, the next question: what is angel's share or angel's pinch?
Evaporation from oak.
Okay,
Yes.
Jagan Bhai has got it correct. Oak evaporation.
Somebody has copied it from the net. It's such a big answer. Google answered.
Okay. Art of making barrels is called what? Anybody? Art of making barrels is called what?
the cask.
No, not casking.
No, it's not called casking. Abhijit, you typed in the wrong question in Google.
Making cask. Making barrel.
What is the art of making barrels? Yeah, okay, Bobby, over to you.
Cooperage.
Cooperage. Yeah,
Cooperage or cooperage.
Okay. And what is single malt and its American equivalent?
American malt?
What is single malt?
It's called American malt.
Single distillery is correct. And American equivalent is straight bourbon. That's also correct.
Straight bourbon. Anil Ji is correct. He's been a good student. What does 18-year-old on a bottle of blended scotch mean?
Blended scotch. Remember blended scotch? So you
What
can
does
have
18-year-old on a bottle of blended scotch mean? This is a trick question, Bobby.
It's a trick question, yes.
Yeah.
I think the blends are, the original scotches are all 18 years old.
No, partially correct, but incorrect. I will not give you marks if you're writing a BHM paper.
Okay, over to you, Bobby.
It means that of all the blends, the youngest blend is 18-year-old.
Okay.
So it will be 18 years and above. So if it's 12 years old, the minimum age is 12 years.
Rashmi, please unmute all.
Okay.
So it's not the same case with single malts, right? It's,
no,
it's
single
the
malts
age,
is different. Yeah,
that's
why I said blended scotch.
Yes.
Okay, ninth question. What are the main differences between Irish, Scotch and American
whiskies?
Rajesh Kundar says Irish is non-smoking.
Okay, and?
They are made more from barley.
I think somebody's already drunk. The scotch is gone scotch smoking.
Okay, quickly, Bobby, let's close it.
Basically, say triple distilled, double distilled, and single distilled, and barley, Irish barley, Scotch barley, and corn.
Yes. And finally,
what is common to?
Anil has got it correct. American whiskies are from corn.
Yeah.
And what is common to NATO, India, and whiskey? Okay. Last question. What is common to NATO,
This is a general knowledge question, nothing to do with whiskies.
NATO.
Okay, no, all are not Scotch. Okay, Bobby, over to you.
The phonetic language, when you're calling out signs, Alpha, Bravo. So in the NATO, so for I it is India, and for W it is whiskey.
Right.
So when you say Alpha, Bravo, Delta, Charlie, so like that, when you go,
All right. So thank you, Bobby, for this excellent program from your end. We all enjoyed, and we are all also inspired to have the whiskeys in the right way, and enjoy and appreciate the whiskey. Not only enjoy it, and probably you've given us a direction on how we could have our fellowship. We normally in our Rotary Club we have fellowship and service. So fellowship is an integral part of bonding and connecting with our fellow Rotarians and Rotarians from all the other clubs as well. And so we definitely, you have inspired Vijay Mane to kickstart, a whiskey club very soon. So we definitely like to invite you, and maybe during the inauguration, you could be one of the persons to inaugurate the whiskey club. Over to you, Sanjay.